or Orang Asli, are the indigenous people and the oldest inhabitants of Peninsular Malaysia. Officially, there are 18 Orang Asli tribes, categorized under 3 main groups according to their different languages and customs. Semang, generally confined to the northern portion of the peninsula. Senoi, residing in the central region. Proto-Malay, in the southern region. The Semang and Senoi groups, being Austroasiatic speaking, are the autochthonous peoples of the Malay Peninsula. The Proto-Malays, who speak Austronesian languages, migrated to the area between 2500 and 1500 BC. There is an Orang Asli museum at Gumbuk, about 25 kilometers north of Kuala Lumpur. History. Orang Asli kept to themselves until the first traders from India arrived in the first millennium AD. Living in the interior, they bartered inland products like resins, incense woods and feathers for salt cloth and iron tools. The rise of historical pre-Islamic Malay kingdoms and later Islamic sultanates assimilated and Malayalized most of the historical Orang Asli people into the community, thus becoming the ancient ancestors for many present-day Malay people, while other Orang Asli groups opt to retreat further inland to avoid contact with outsiders. The arrival of British colonists brought further inroads in the lives of Orang Asli. They were targeted by Christian missionaries and became subjects of anthropological research. Slave raids into Orang Asli settlements were also quite a common feature back in the 18th and 19th centuries. These slave raiders were mainly local Malays and Bataks, who considered the Orang Asli as Kafirs, non-humans, savages, and jungle beasts. The modus operandi was basically to swoop down a settlement and then kill off all the adult men. Women and children were captured alive as they are easier to tame. The captives Orang Asli slaves were sold off or given to local rulers and chieftains to gain the favor. Slave trade soon developed and even continued into the present century despite the official abolition of all forms of slavery in 1884. The derogatory term Sakai is used to refer to the Orang Asli until the middle of the 20th century meant slave or dependent. Many of the elders Orang Asli still remember this sad period of the history, and they detest being called Sakai. During the Malayan emergency of 1948 to 1960, the Orang Asli became a vital component of national security, as the help enabled the Malayan army to defeat the communist insurgents. 2 administrative initiatives were introduced to highlight the importance of Orang Asli, as well to protect their identity. The Department of Aborigines was established in 1950, and the Aboriginal Peoples Ordinance was enacted in 1954. After independence, development of the Orang Asli became a prime objective of the government, and in 1961 a policy was adopted to integrate the Orang Asli into the wider Malaysian society. In the 1970s and 1980s, Malaysia experienced a period of sustained growth characterized by modernization, industrialization and land development, which resulted in encroachments on Orang Asli land. In response to this encroachment, the Orang Asli mobilized and formed the Peninsular Malaysia Orang Asli Association, which has given them a stronger voice and greater visibility. The Orang Asli are now known as Orang Kita, following the introduction of the One Malaysia concept by Najib Razak. Economy. Orang Asli living in remote forest areas engaged in some trading with the Malays, with jungle produce being exchanged for salt, knives and metal axe heads. There was also evidence of trade in blowpipes and blowpipe bamboo among certain tribes. It has also been shown that the Orang Asli have played a significant role in the Malay Peninsula's economic history as collectors and primary traders as early as the 5th century AD. An early 19th century report also tells of Negritos providing forest products as tribute to the Malay chiefs of the river basins they resided in. Demography. In 2000, the Orang Asli constitute only 0.5% of the total population in Malaysia. The population is approximately 148,000. The largest group are the Senoi, constituting about 54% of the total Orang Asli population. The Proto-Malays form 43% and the Semang forming 3%. The poverty rate among Orang Asli is 76.9%. In addition to this high rate, the Statistics Department of Malaysia has classified 35.2% of the population as being very poor. The majority of Orang Asli live in rural areas while a minority have moved into urban areas. In 1991, the literacy rate for the Orang Asli was 43% compared to the national rate of 86% at the time. They have an average life expectancy of 53 years. A high infant mortality rate is also evident with 51.7 deaths per 1,000 births. Languages. The division of Orang Asli into three categories is not due to linguistic differences but is merely sociological. Linguistically they divide into two groups. The first group speak Aslan languages, which form part of the Austroasiatic language family. These are further divided into the Jahaic languages, Senoi languages, Semang languages, and Jahat. The languages which fall under the Jahaic language subgroup of the Chequang, Jahai, Batak, Kesu, Kintak, and Mendric languages. The Lano language, Temiya language, and Semai language fall into the Senoic language subgroup. Languages that fall into the Semaic subgroup include the Semelai language, Samokberi language, and Basisi language. The second group speak Aboriginal Malay languages, which form part of the Austronesian language family. These include the Jakun and Temuan languages among others. Besides these, most Orang Aslis are fluent in the Malay language, the official language of Malaysia. Lifestyle and religion. Orang Asli are traditionally animists where they believe in the presence of spirits in various objects. However, in the 21st century, many of them have embraced monotheistic religions such as Islam and Christianity following some active state-sponsored dakwah by Muslims, and evangelism by Christian missionaries. In June 2007, an Orang Asli church was allegedly torn down by the state government in Guamusang, Kelantan. As of 2008, a suit has been filed against the Kelantan state authorities. The affected Orang Asli also sought a declaration under Article 11 of the Constitution of Malaysia that they have the right to practice the religion of their choice and to build their own prayer house. Negritos of Peninsular Malaysia. According to the Encyclopedia of Malaysia, the Negritos, who number approximately 2,000, are regarded as the earliest inhabitants of the Malay Peninsula. They are of Australo-Melanesian affinity and probably descend from the people of Hoabenian cultural period, with many of the burials found dating back 10,000 years ago. They speak the Aslan languages, which is part of the Austroasiatic language family, as do the Senoi agriculturalist neighbors. Negritos belong to various subgroups, namely the Kesu, Kintak, Lano, Jahai, Mendric and Batak. Those from Perak Gadar and Pahang are also known as Sagai. The meaning of Sagai is dead slaves, while those from Kelantan and Terengganu were called Pangan, the forest peoples. The Senoi and Proto-Malay arrived much later, probably during the Neolithic period. Social and legal status. The government agency entrusted to oversee the affairs of the Orang Asli is the Jabatan Hal Ehwal Orang Asli. This body is under the Malaysian Ministry of Rural Development, and it was first set up in 1954. Among its stated objectives are to eradicate poverty among the Orang Asli, improving the health, promoting education, and improving the general livelihood. There is a high incidence of poverty among the Orang Asli. In 1997, 80% of all Orang Asli lived below the poverty line. This ratio is extremely high compared to the national poverty rate of 8.5% at the time. Some legislations which concerns Orang Asli: the National Land Code 1965, Land Conservation Act 1960, Protection of Wildlife Act 1972, National Parks Act 1980, and most importantly the Aboriginal Peoples Act 1954. The Aboriginal Peoples Act 1954 provides for the setting up and establishment of the Orang Asli reserve land. However, the Act also includes the power accorded to the Director General of the JHEOA to order Orang Asli out of such reserved land at its discretion, and award compensation to affected people also at its discretion. A landmark case on this matter is in the 2002 case of Sagong Bintarzi and Amp Ors v Kerajaan Negeri Selangor. The case was concerned with the state using its powers conferred under the 1954 Act to evict Orang Asli from gazetted Orang Asli reserve land. The High Court ruled in favor of Sagong Tarzi, who represented the Orang Asli, and this decision was upheld by the Court of Appeal. The Orang Asli, classified as Bumiputras, a status signifying indigeneity to Malaysia which carries certain social, economic, and political rights, along with the Malays and the natives of Sabah and Sarawak. However, this status is generally not mentioned in the Constitution. The former Prime Minister of Malaysia, Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, made controversial remarks regarding the Orang Asli, saying that Orang Asli were not entitled more rights than Malays even though they were natives to the land. He posted on his blog comparing the Orang Asli in Malaysia to Native Americans in the US, Maoris in New Zealand, and Aboriginals in Australia. He was criticized by spokespeople and advocates for the Orang Asli who said that the Orang Asli desire to be recognized as the true natives of Malaysia and that his statement would expose the land to businessmen and loggers. Notable Orang Aslis: Amani Williams Hunt Abdullah, a Orang Asli politician and Orang Asli activist, born to an English father and a Semai mother.